Empires rarely collapse in a single moment. They end quietly, with a choice that seemed harmless.
The decision that ended an empire. Empires rarely collapse in a single moment. They don't fall with explosions or dramatic final battles. Most of the time, they end quietly, with a decision that seems reasonable, even harmless at the time. No one stands up and announces, "This choice will destroy us." History only realizes it later. This is the story of one such decision, a single choice made in confidence that slowly, silently ended an empire that once ruled the world. At the time, no one protested, no one panicked, and that's why it worked. The empire at its peak. For centuries, this empire had survived everything: wars, plagues, internal rebellions. It controlled trade routes, armies, laws, and faith. Its leaders believed the empire was not just powerful, but permanent. From the capital, officials looked at maps and saw stability. Borders held, taxes flowed, the army stood ready. To them, collapse was unthinkable. But permanence is dangerous. It makes leaders careless, and that's when the decision was made. A problem that didn't look serious. The empire faced a familiar issue. Governing a vast territory was becoming expensive. Distant regions complained. Local leaders demanded more autonomy. Corruption quietly spread through provincial administration. None of this felt urgent, so instead of reforming the system, the leadership chose something easier. They would outsource power. Local authorities were given more control as long as they paid taxes and pledged loyalty. It wasn't seen as weakness, it was called efficiency. Why manage everything ourselves, the advisors argued, when others can do it for us? The emperor agreed. The decision saved money, reduced responsibility, and kept the capital comfortable, at least for now. The calm that followed. For years, everything seemed fine. Taxes continued to arrive, rebellions decreased. The empire appeared stable. Historians later called this period the calm before decay, because something subtle was happening. The empire was no longer ruling, it was delegating authority. And authority once given away rarely returns. Local leaders began building their own power, private armies, personal alliances, independent ambitions. Still, the capital ignored it. After all, nothing had gone wrong yet. The warming signs. Then came the warnings. Border defenses weakened. Local rulers delayed tax payments. Orders from the capital were questioned instead of obeyed. Some advisors raised concerns. They argued the empire was losing control, piece by piece. But reform would be costly. Reasserting power would require confrontation, and confrontation meant risk. So the leadership chose comfort over correction. Another decision. They did nothing. When loyalty became conditional. Over time, loyalty turned into negotiation. Local leaders asked, "What do we gain by remaining loyal?" The empire had no answer, because it had already surrendered the one thing that mattered most: authority. When external enemies attacked, the empire expected unified defense. Instead, it found hesitation. Why fight for a distant capital that no longer governed, protected, or invested? The empire had become an idea without enforcement, and ideas alone don't stop armies.
The moment it became irreversible. The final turning point didn't feel dramatic. There was no official declaration, no rebellion announced. One powerful region simply stopped listening. It ignored orders, refused taxes, negotiated directly with enemies. The capital threatened punishment, but it had no power left to enforce it. The army was fragmented, the treasury was empty, the authority already gone. That was the moment the empire truly ended, not when cities fell, not when enemies invaded, but when a command was given and no one obeyed. The collapse that followed. After that, everything happened quickly. Other regions followed, borders dissolved, enemies moved freely. Historians later described the collapse as sudden, but it wasn't sudden at all. It had been unfolding for decades, since the moment the empire chose convenience over control. The final collapse was just the visible result of an invisible decision made long ago. Why this decision matters? Empires don't die from attack alone. They die when leaders believe stability means permanence, efficiency matters more than authority, comfort is safer than reform. The decision that ended this empire wasn't evil, it wasn't reckless, it was reasonable, and that's what made it so dangerous. The message history leaves behind. History is full of loud disasters, but the most important lessons come from quiet choices, the ones made to avoid discomfort, to delay responsibility, to preserve short-term peace. Because those decisions don't feel like endings, they feel like solutions, until one day nothing remains to defend, and the empire, once thought eternal, exists only as a warning. Final thought. If history teaches us anything, it's this. Most collapses begin not with chaos, but with comfort, and the decisions we ignore today often decide our fate tomorrow.